Last time I spoke with you in the physical like this, I mentioned that I now can speak with my inner being. I call my inner being IB for short, thanks to you. And I have questions about that guidance that I get from IB. And I feel a connection with you often. It seems to be the same a lot of times. But I've gotten in arguments with IB.
Those conversations are not what you want them to be, because you have to be in the vortex to achieve the vibrational alignment that makes your reception of that thought vibration possible. So that's the thing that's a little tricky about personal communication, is that often the time you most want to talk or ask for guidance is at a time that you need it. But at a time you need it, you're out of the vortex, and then you don't have access to it.
So
sometimes those conversations are just you and the physical and you and the physical.
Well, sometimes it's almost schizophrenic. My normal personality will be saying one thing, and then I get the clear guidance that it just goes back and forth, and that's what I mean by an argument.
Well, if you're able to do that is a remarkable thing, and it's a good thing if you're able to shift vibration that rapidly.
It is when it happens, and luckily, usually when it's happened, there's been no one there to witness it, because it feels...
We've never witnessed it.
And the question I have about that guidance is, it seems that guidance, I want to know, should I do this? Like I'm at a point in my life where I can retire from the job I have, and I'm thinking of different options for a new career. Retirement means just doing something else. I'm ready to move on to something else. And I've had some ideas about what I want to do, trying to get them started, and I start down one direction, and then something new comes along, and I want to focus on that, and I get in a discussion with Ivy. Well, why did you tell me that was a good idea, the first one, when this one seems to come along and you say this one's a good idea first?
Well, one thing that you'll notice about that guidance is that we are always saying yes to what you are wanting. In other words, in the early days, Esther's fervent desire was that she speak clearly. Now, if she had asked us the question, will my ability to articulate for you improve? We would have said, absolutely. But if she says, am I speaking clearly? We say, yes, you are. But we don't say, yes, you are, but it will get better later. Because to add, but it will get better later, then would cast doubt on what she's doing now, and then the connection would be lost. And so you have to understand that the source within you is always calling you into the vortex, always calling you. And anything that you've put into your vibrational escrow, and anything that you're highlighting, source is going to encourage you toward it. But there's a significant thing that we would like to give to you, and you can talk it over with IB, and we are certain that you will find confirmation about this from your personal interaction, and that is, whenever you are at this place where you can't decide this or this, it makes little difference which you choose. They are equal enough in vibration, and that's why they're both being presented to you. And in those cases, it's usually just more collection of more data on the way to a stronger determination. There's also something to be said for just make a decision and then line up with it. There are many choices that are very comparable, because you can, it's the power of your thought that's going to cause something to evolve, not that it's already been carved into a perfect situation. And so there really are just situations where it just does not matter which one you choose. But all of this sounds a little bit like trying to make it happen rather than allowing it to happen. Because when you're in the vortex, you're not having these kinds of conversations. When you're in the vortex, you don't say, which way should I go? You're saying, I can feel that this is the way I'm going, and wild horses couldn't keep me from it. In other words, the path that is most significant lights up in a very powerful way. And if you are in that place where you're not getting that, then our advice is that you're taking action too soon.
I think my question, if I can formulate it right, is when I went to the second thing, I asked Ibe, I said, why didn't you tell me this was coming? And their answer to me was, we can tell you whether you be good at what you're thinking of and whether it's going to work for you. If you line up with it, it will work. And that's what they've been telling me. And then when I got on the second path, they said, yes, that'll work for you. You'll be good at it. And I said, well, why the hell didn't you tell me about the second one instead of going down the first road? And they said basically what you just said, that if you line up with it, you'll be good at either one. Just make a decision and line up with it. And I guess that's my question. I'm looking for confirmation from you with that.
When you use your inner being as a fortune teller,
yeah, I think that's the tendency we have.
What your inner being is really wanting you to do is create your own reality. Right. Your inner being, what your inner being is wanting to say politely to you is, listen, through all that you've lived, you have clearly stated not just what you want, but how you want to feel there. Not just what you'd like to do, but how well you'd like to be paid and how you want to be treated. In other words, you've put all of those components over a variety of situations into this. And we, as your inner being, are standing here holding true to all of that. And it's your job to tune yourself into this, you see. And tuning yourself into it, it's interesting because as we visit with you here, you may or may not be tuned in to us. By the time the first person comes to the chair, usually we've offered enough and you've felt enough resonance that you are most often in tune with who you are. So that no matter what you're talking about, as we visit with you, we're talking to you more from an in the vortex point of view. You may notice, any of you have been studying us for a while, our first priority with anyone that we're visiting with is to call them in any way we can into the vortex. Because if we don't get you in here, you're not going to hear anything that we say. In other words, our answers are based upon who you really are. But if you're not in the vicinity, you can't hear them. And they're just annoying, you see. And so that's the thing that's a little bit tricky about it. When you witness someone coming here and asking questions, you're assuming that the answers are accurate. And we want you to understand that our effort is always at giving this person as much as they can hear from where they are. In other words, and that's what your inner being is saying to you. No point in giving you the big picture that you're not ready to hear. And maybe you need some of those steps along the way in order to see the big picture. And it would be like, that would be like Jerry and Esther driving from Boca, Florida, Boca Raton, up to Asheville and setting their navigational system and then yelling at Garmin, hey, what are we doing here? We told you we wanted to go to Asheville. This isn't Asheville. What are we doing? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Why are we in Georgia? We told you we want to go to Asheville. It's because it's on the way. It's on the way. And there are several things that are on the way. And sometimes it's not just on the way to where you say you now want to go. It's on your way to where you really want to go, you see.
So kind of leads into what you said before, enjoy the journey. Well, that leads into the next part of this is, I said I'm about to retire, and the business that I'm starting, it's a real estate investment business, and I feel like it's a sort of chicken and egg thing. I don't feel like I can work the business enough to make money, the flow of money that I need before I can afford to retire. But I have a job, so I don't have enough time to do that. Well, but part of me says, take the leap and jump. It'll work out, but it scares the bejesus out of me, and I don't know.
And that fear is your guidance saying,
Help, give me more, tell me more.
Let EB translate that. Well, what that means, when you feel fear, what does that mean? What does fear mean? It means this thought.
It's contrary to what my inner being believes.
So that fear, we would pay attention to it and realize that you're sort of jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. And it's not to say that it won't turn out fine, but you don't need that sort of trauma. It's interesting, there are so many people who are employed and they will express in their out of the vortex moments how tired they are, how overwhelmed they are, how unappreciated they are, how underpaid they are, or whatever. And from all of that, they are building a better future experience. And so then they do a pretty good job of thinking about what they want and lining up and tuning in. And so they move themselves occasionally from overwhelmment and dissatisfaction into a sort of hopeful feeling. And when they do, the vortex takes them in where they can get a clear view of their future experience. But unless they're consistently hanging around in the vibration of hope or belief, it's not a good idea to take that leap of faith, because your fear is telling you you've got some still vibration going on that's not going to make this an easy ride. So we would never move towards something unless it felt like a really good idea every time we think about it.
Okay, that consistently feel like, because I get there sometimes, I just feel like going and making the leap, but then I get back to this spot where it just doesn't feel good.
Never go unless it consistently feels good and chronically feels good in the interest of fairness. So then what we sometimes see is that a person is dissatisfied and wanting to do something else. And they say, as you said, if I stay here, I can't do that. Well, that really isn't true. There are many authors and writers, and there are a lot of businesses, including the business that you're talking about, that you have time to put toward it, because the time, when you are in your vortex, you're leveraging your time in a powerful way. And there are so many people who claim that they can't do the new thing until they stop doing the old thing. But when they stop doing the old thing, that fear factor steps in because they're not up to speed yet with what they want. And then they're out of the vortex. And even though they now have full time, they can't make it work. Because it wasn't the time that was necessary, it was the alignment that was necessary. So what you're wanting to factor in, of course, if you are employed and it's hard, if they're beating you, if they're abusing you, if they're taking advantage of you, then we would say that environment's not going to be very conducive to you ever getting into the vortex, and maybe it would be good for you to remove yourself from that environment. But so what your inner being and what we are always weighing is, what's the path of least resistance? And it's clear that the path of least resistance right now is to enjoy the employment and the abundance that's coming from it now, while you focus yourself into the new and get that going. Do you know most empires and businesses and things that are set into motion, most of them are 99.99% complete before there is any physical manifestation of them. Just by staying where you are and imagining what you want, you can get that thing really rolling while you're still receiving the money from this. And when you get it sufficiently revved up, your impulse will be go, and there won't be any lag time because you've done the vibrational work. But until then, you're going to feel fear.
Okay. Second line of questioning. I'm a big Seth student also. You've mentioned Seth a lot, that Jerry started out reading Seth. And one thing I've noticed, I read Seth all the time and I listen to your tapes all the time, so I'm steeped in both. And I see a difference between the two. Seth goes into great detail about, in human terminology, we talk about past and future lives, but I understand time is only a construct for us here, and everything is happening now. So those other lifetimes.
Both Seth and Abraham are doing our best to answer the question that's being asked. And so the primary differences that you see are in the questions that were being asked at the beginning. Seth didn't move much beyond what was being asked by those very close. There were never any larger forums.
Right.
It was always a small group, and most of it was initiated by what Jane and Rob were interested in at the time. And so Jerry's primary interest, as he began plying us with questions, were in the area of how to help people have more financial prosperity, because that was what he was teaching before. And then how to help them just live better in general.
Well, what really, this really excites me. Your teachings and reading Seth, it really excites me, just trying to understand more. And you have said we come in, yes, we choose our parents, and yes, we choose our lives, but it's more of a general nature. But you say we come in as a clean slate. We're not making up for past sins and all of that.
Well, we've never said you come in as a clean slate. We have said that you're not making up for past lives. Mm-hmm. Let us explain it to you as we know it to be. So, as you live your life here exploring contrast, you are sending these rockets of expansion forward, and non-physically speaking, in terms of this vibrational reality, you are becoming that. Now, if you were to croak today, that expansion, your inner being has expanded to that place, and that is who you are as you come forth again.